So Dan Schneider, the infamous television writer and producer, will be allowed to continue his defamation lawsuit over the Quiet on Set documentary from Discovery. Warner Brothers and Sony. So Warner Brothers is the one who owned, it's Warner Brothers Discovery. So they distributed the docuseries, and Sony is one of the production companies for it. Warner Brothers and Sony sought to dismiss this defamation lawsuit under the state's, presumably California, the state's anti-SLAPP statute. And SLAPP is an acronym, SLAPP, which stands for Strategic Lawsuits Against Public Participation. Basically, this is a statute that, bars litigation that's intended to chill free speech in matters of public concern, is how one of the publications I read kind of phrased it. Meaning, if something is of the public interest or the public concern, as I said, there's a lot more leeway and grace when it comes to potentially defamation because it's important and people can't just sue just to suppress the information. So that was their argument, saying we're allowed to do this because this is important for the public to know. But the judge in the case, Ashfaq G. Chowdhury, I know I'm mispronouncing it. It's a very common South Asian last name. I know I'm mispronouncing it. Chowdhury. The judge ruled that Schneider's claims were not frivolous, saying, quote, he's suing the defendants about a documentary they made about him that focuses on his activities and, which a reasonable viewer might conclude, makes damning implications about his conduct, end quote. So what is he even talking about here? So, of course, Dan Schneider, like I said, a very accomplished, infamous television writer and producer. Really, I think he started as an actor in the 80s, on sitcoms, but really rose to acclaim, if you can call it that, or at least success, being a writer and showrunner for Nickelodeon programs, live-action Nickelodeon programs for children, right? So, including, and this is his resume, including but not limited to, All That, Kenan and Kel, The Amanda Show, Drake and Josh, Zoe 101, iCarly, Victorious, Henry Danger, and Game Shakers, right? So that basically defined what Nickelodeon children's sitcoms were for 25 years. The content of these shows were and are often criticized for being oddly sexual for children's shows. A lot of focus on feet. And that's the big thing. It's clear Dan Schneider has a foot fetish of some kind. And it's also been long known that he was a very toxic and even hostile boss. A 2022 piece for Business Insider cited a former writer claiming that he created, quote, a maddening, disgusting, controlling little bubble, end quote. So just being an awful boss, sometimes crossing the line when it came to maybe sexually inappropriate comments or just not a great place to work, right? And Variety notes that Nickelodeon did cut ties with him in 2018 following an internal investigation. This was suspiciously not long after the Me Too era began. So a lot of people were like, did they discover something that is damning? Especially considering Nickelodeon enabled him for 20 plus years. Then he kind of faded, right? The whole thing, because it's 2018, he kind of faded away from people's concerns or thinking. People would still be making YouTube videos about him, what did Dan Schneider do, and all this kind of sensationalized kind of stuff, but it was not on the public's mind, and perhaps it was never really on the mainstream public's mind. But that all changed earlier this year with the docuseries Quiet on Set: The Dark Side of Kids TV. It's a docuseries that explores the toxic environment, specifically on the set of these Nickelodeon children's sitcoms. Notably, Dan Schneider is not directly accused of anything in the docuseries, but Chowdhury, the judge, feels that Schneider's lawyers argued, quote, persuasively that defamation can be implied that the trailer and documentary state or imply Schneider sexually abused children who worked on his show and that Schneider was a child sexual abuser, end quote. Even if they didn't actually accuse Schneider of anything, the fact that they are putting him in the same conversation as confirmed abusers, people who have been convicted of actual abuse, is almost like a guilty by association. And the lawsuit claimed that the show created a quote-unquote defamatory implication. And Schneider said, quote, "I have never done any of these horrific acts. Any statement or implication that I did so is false, and I will testify at trial that any such statement or implication is false," end quote. So here's the thing. Dan Schneider is not a good dude. I am not upset one iota that this guy does not have the power and money that he was getting for, again, like 20, 25 years. But, legally speaking, he might actually have a point here. That, docuseries, have really become, the new tabloids, right? They're often focusing on overly sensationalized scandals or, very insensitively covering, true crime, situations. And it's everything that they're saying could be true. And again, most of the docuseries is firsthand accounts from the child stars who are now grown up. So everything they're saying is true, could be true, and is probably true. But the show isn't exactly hard-hitting journalism. It's not following the same ethics. It is there to entertain you first, or maybe entertain isn't the right word, but evoke some kind of very visceral response. In this case, horror or indignation about the conditions, right? And that's the only benefit to shows like these is, however sensationalized and cynical and cash grabby these kinds of programs are, they often, but just by nature of showing the thing, it draws attention to otherwise ignored or forgotten issues, right? I haven't watched it, but I think of the Menendez brothers, the docuseries, and then there's also the Ryan Murphy show, the dramatizing it. There's talks of those brothers maybe getting released finally, even though they were sentenced to life in prison, right? The only thing that is good about these kind of things is that they bring people that they like I was saying with Dan Schneider, people didn't really even know what was going on in Nickelodeon. The mainstream public didn't know. So I think we are in a better world that quiet on set, the dark side of kids TV exists. Because if for nothing else, it put a spotlight on something that had been hidden for so long. But it's also very clear that this documentary was riding the wave of the mysteries surrounding what did Dan Schneider do, how far did he maybe go doing stuff, and kind of ran with that mystery, and basically, without explicitly saying it, implying that maybe he's of the level of some of these abusers. So, I'm not really upset that this guy, is getting a bad shake because he deserves it, frankly. But legally speaking, he could very well be able to win this lawsuit now that he's allowed to continue with it. Wow, what an interesting story. I'm sure you have some thoughts about the topic, so comment below, let me know what you think. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really, really helps people find the channel and makes me feel all warm inside. Until next time, I'm Peter Mancuso. Peace out.